Brooke, how's it going today?
Conrad, what's up, man? I hear you're getting ready to go to Italy.
Yeah, by the time this is out, I might be in Italy. That seems plausible. So if you're listening, maybe I'm 30,000 feet above the air in a lay flat seat. And it's all because credit card points, not because of any sort of, egregious fees that I paid the airlines or anything like that. So it should be fun. Looking forward to it.
Well, I'm heading there this summer. My daughter is doing a study abroad this June, so we're going to be going over there as well, and yeah, really looking forward to it. So I want to get some hints from you.
Yeah, I'll try to send you some hints my first time as well. So I'll be experiencing it all for the first time. But, it should be fun and a new experience for me, too. I think Jodi said before we hit record that she'd never been to Europe until a year or two ago. I've never been either, as strange as that is. All the places I've been, I've never jumped the pond, so to speak. And I couldn't go without my wife. So it's kind of our 10-year anniversary. That's the reason for the trip. Not
Oh.
really vacation rental related at all. But yeah, all good there. Well, anyways, Brooke, we've got a great guest today, Jodi. We're going to be diving into a lot. But I'm curious, how did you and Jodi originally connect in our lovely vacation rental world?
Yeah. So, well, first off, Jodi is like a legend. I think if there was a Hall of Fame, she'd be like a first round, unanimous voted in. So I'm really excited to have her on this. But yeah, I think we were on a panel together at VRMA. So does that sound about right, Jodi?
We were on a panel and we talked, but like we really didn't talk in depth. We were just sitting on the panel talking about different experiences. And you put your property up in Bethany Beach, and for auction, and I think it was for advocacy for
That's right.
VRMA. And I'm like, ooh, I'd like, that's not too far for me. So I bid on it. And then that's when we started talking. But I do have a great memory from that place. My daughter had just learned how to ride a bike, and we live in the mountains. So March in the mountains is not, you don't ride bikes. And I'm,
No.
on a mountain hill. That's very hard to learn about how to ride a bike. And I have a picture of Georgia riding her bike with, I don't know if you guys have little girls, but they get the mermaid tails made. And it's a mermaid backpack. So it's her riding the bike with her mermaid backpack to the pool. And
That's awesome.
we spent all day at the pool because it was March.
Nice.
So anyway, it was super fun. And I've actually been back after that. I rented
Great.
with you with a couple of my coworkers / friends. We had a girls' weekend. So yeah, so it's been over the
That's
years, and then we got to know each other more, different conferences and stuff. So
Yeah, that's great. I forgot all about that. So yeah, I put my place up for advocacy silent auction, and you bid on it, and you had a great time there. So that's so cool. And I didn't realize she learned how to ride her bike there. It's a great memory. If you ever want to go back, let me know.
Nice. I don't think we've ever had a guest of one of your vacation rentals on the show
I
before, Brooke.
know
So there's
that's
a
the first.
first time. Yeah, there's a first time for everything. But the whole mountain bike story, Jodi, there's like a core memory that got unlocked for me there. I grew up in the mountains of Western Massachusetts. I mean, we didn't have mountains, but we did have hills. And yeah, I certainly crashed, a time or two going down the driveway when I was a little overconfident, and the driveway's like this straight down, and went straight down. And luckily, I had the helmet and the knee pads on and stuff like that. But even with that, like you can still sustain some legitimate damage to your body.
Yeah.
Just
oh yeah, it's hard to learn
nine-year-old
to
me.
ride a bike in the mountains. It's like hard to play basketball when you live on a mountain, right? My kids got really good at shooting hoops because they'd have to chase the ball. So
If
That's
you missed, you got to go chase the ball.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the absolute worst. Well, a lot of things you got to chase when you're building a vacation rental company is all the mistakes you're going to make and all the bad things that are going to happen. And Jodi, you were kind enough to contribute some of these mistakes to Vacation Rental Secrets. So we're going to run through these mistakes today, if you're okay with it, and talk a little bit about kind of what each of these mean to you, the lessons you learn, and the stories that maybe you can tell us a little bit about each mistake. Because I'm sure through the mistakes you learned some good as well, and you obviously had a lot of positive outcomes. But before we get there, maybe you could update me, because before we hit record, Jodi, I was a little out of date as to where you stand today. I was associating you with a business maybe that you're not involved with as much anymore. So if you don't mind, could you give the listener who maybe hasn't known you or they're not paying attention to the Hall of Famers, as Brooke alluded to a few minutes ago, where you stand today, your physical location, where you are, and then also like the businesses that you're focused on as well?
Yeah. So I started in the business about 25 years ago when my parents had a vacation rental company here in Deep Creek. I worked for them for about 12 years. They sold the company, and I started TaylorMade Deep Creek Vacations with my brother and my husband. We grew it from 0 to 520 some properties. And after 14 years, we decided to take a step back. And Joe, Chad, myself, we sold the company to V-Trips. I worked it for about a year, and then Joe and I and Chad stepped out of the game December 2021, and that's when I launched my new company, Timber Rock Village, which is all like custom properties built in one area with a central lodge, lake access. We'll have wilderness trails, a pool eventually, but it's located in the mountains of Maryland. Well, my mountains are probably not close, like West Coast mountains. But anyway, our mountains in Maryland. And so we have a lake and a ski resort right here. I'm about 3 hours from DC, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. So it kind of gives you an idea of where my location is. So
I love that. I need to come visit once it's built. And actually, have had the pleasure of staying in one of Jodi's vacation rentals, not your personal, but right on the lake there. Unbelievable. We rented a boat for the whole week and just had an absolute blast. Had my brother and his family out there, and the place was fantastic, Jodi. So this is when you were still running it.
Yep.
Yeah. Are the goal of these new properties, Jodi? Are they short-term rentals, or these are more like residential people live in them?
No, they're all short-term rentals. So phase one, well, right now I have 4 renting. 2 I built, 2 were already built. So there's 4 renting. I will have 5 more done by Memorial Day, crossing our fingers. They will all be owned by Joe and myself. So I will be the owner. And then we'll, of course, rent them out. And then once those are done, phase 2 will start. There'll be 7 more with the pool, the wilderness trails, and the fitness gym. So it'll take a couple years to complete it all, but it's very different, building. I'm like, even today I was learning stuff like, wait, I don't understand that. What does that all mean with like the different aspects of like the job of developing properties, right? So it's a whole nother gamut, but it's super fun, and I love working numbers. So I'm having fun doing that too. So,
well, Jodi, you can't complain about bad owners now, though.
I can't. It's only my husband. I'm like, wait, because you're back to starting all over again, right? So like, it's like when you wear every hat again. And I keep telling Joe, and he keeps saying, "You keep nagging me." I'm like, "Well, hire me a maintenance guy." I'm like, I need a dude. I need a dude to do some work. But yeah, no, no bad owners here. But we're also starting on I don't know how much you know this, but we're starting a company down in Florida too, with a gentleman down there that we work with. So we will be developing a company down there with. I won't be the only owner.
I didn't know that. Where in Florida?
We'll start in Cape Coral.
Sweet.
So Southwest Florida kind of focus. Yeah, so we're going to see, we have one, it was actually a friend of mine who she fired 2 of her property managers, and then looks at me and goes, "Can you run my house?" I go, I don't live there. And she goes, "But I want you, and none of them are like you, and can you do that from Maryland?" And I'm like, I got to look into that. And so we did, and I'm doing that with Chad, my brother's with Joe and I, and then our partner down there. So that's a whole new venture too. So,
Great.
No rest for the wicked here. Just,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wait, you were out for like a year, or I guess a year.
It was a week, I think.
A week.
A week, and then you're on to new things. Well, it shows you that you probably still have a passion for it and a drive for it. So I think a lot of the mistakes that you probably mentioned here, Jodi, are probably from, your time, in TaylorMade and kind of running that business. But I'm sure the lessons you learned are going to serve you well as you proceed forward with the company down in Florida, with the builds that you're doing in your neck of the woods now. So I'll go in, if you guys are okay with it time-wise, with number 1 here. Number 1, Jodi, let's trust your gut. This goes from hiring and firing to knowing who to onboard as an owner or not. Joking a few minutes ago about the quality of owners when you own the property. Sometimes you know what your intuition is telling you, but you're swayed by outside influences or the demand that you have at that moment. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. What was the lesson here, Jodi, as you maybe signed some bad owners and then later had to eject them out of the program?
Well, okay, I could do employees and owners. Owners is like in the beginning when you start a company, it's very interesting because there's some of us in this industry that have built from the ground up, and some of us kind of bought in, and then you're not starting here, but starting here and trying to figure out it, right? So I started from the ground up. And in the beginning, I was fighting my parents' old company. They had sold it. They weren't owners, but I was trying to get exposure and people to learn to trust us. I just had a newborn baby. We were just fresh and we were eager. And I feel like you just take everything. You take every owner, no matter what, even if they don't fit your idea and your vision. So it didn't take me that long to figure out that was a dumb mistake. I had an owner that I got along with him, but not his sister. And even he didn't get along with his sister, but she had like 50%. I'm talking headache after headache after headache. I mean, and they just kept coming. So I fired that owner, but I learned how to fire owners quick. And, it's funny, back then, no one talked about flushing out your inventory. No one did. But I was, it got to a point that life's too short. right? And you have a vision for your home and or for your company, and you have a reputation to hold. The owners, I fired that owner right away, and another one was a style of property. I walked into it. They had a cement floor, not even like the nice glaze, you get like that looks really cool nowadays. Cement floor, day bed in the great room as the couch, but it was also dubbed as a bed. It was terrible. It was like the calico color brick on the outside, but it had great lakefront. Yeah, no, that wasn't a good one. I did say no to that one right away. I actually said, if you're gonna tear it down and rebuild, let me know. Um, then the other one, which I do think goes into another point, was employees. Like, I think we just get in a mode where we need to hire and we need to hire fast. Or if you're like, so if you're hiring fast for like a season, you feel like you're just hiring warm bodies. And so that gets a little nerve wracking. Or if you have a key employee that quit, your feel is that you have to replace them right away. And if I was at some point not careful there, and I felt like I hired as a reaction, and I didn't do my research, and I didn't wait because I really didn't necessarily need to fill that void. Like it was, it got to a point I didn't need to fill it, but I felt like I had to. So I think there's sometimes when you get in there, trust your gut in the beginning. Just don't rush and don't be reactive to every situation, because you feel at the time like, oh my gosh, I remember when I'd have an employee tell me they were quitting, I'd be like, oh no, like, and it was a key employee. And then, after a day, I take a time and I didn't rush into it. So I just trust your gut with me going to
Sure.
things, and don't be reactive, where I find that I was reactive often.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This came up a lot, Jody. Just so you know, that you were not the only one in the book. Trust
I
your gut was
saw that. I
it
read
was
through the
amazing.
book and I'm like, oh, it's not just me. So happy. Because that
Jennifer,
gets nerve wracking.
it does. Yeah. So Jennifer Mucho with Arrive, she talked about. She said again, she discovered it's best to trust your gut instinct in all things business. You know best if you stop and listen. And Elaine Stitcher, who I know she talks about like talking about like hiring, especially 9 times out of 10, your gut doesn't let you down. So
Yeah.
you were not alone with that statement. So
Well, I think we all
Yeah.
get into business and we kind of all have a good gut instinct. So I think we just got to be more in tune to it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I always call it taste too, Jody. Like you just have to have taste. They have to have like the right approach, and there's words on a screen, or there's numbers, or there's data, and that's all fine. I love all those things. But at the end of the day, it's like, does it feel right? Do you want to move forward? And actually that dovetails perfectly into number two, which you alluded to a second ago, Jody. Don't just hire warm bodies. We've all been there. When the stress of a peak season arrives and you're short staffed, don't let quality control fall by the wayside. Hiring just to fill a spot can actually cause headaches in the long run. It's kind of an extension of what you were just saying, but anything extra to add into that, or is that kind of the lesson there,
Well,
right?
it's
Don't
hard.
compromise quality. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hiring and firing. So like hiring is
Mm,
trust your gut on who you hire, and then don't be too late to fire. So that's
mm,
the other thing. Like there's a couple things. One thing I couldn't stand when I managed, and I managed at the end of the day 230 employees when we had our company. That's a lot, and it's funny when you look at Joe Chad. We all manage differently. Like, and in this business, there's a lot of women, and we're very emotional, right? So you have to be able to handle that. So if you go to Joe and you cry, he would be like, no, you got to go into another room. I can't handle it. Chad would throw tissues at you. And then there I am. So like it was always a revolving door, right? Like I was always like trying to do everything else I was doing, but also 230 emotions, right? And different personalities. And so you find that like there's some that cause drama, some employees that just it made the workday harder. And sometimes you keep them because you think they're really like you need to have them on your team because they're a good producer of whatever they do. Cut the dead weight. I mean, I rather like even if they're good producers, sometimes they don't show up to work on a busy Saturday turn, right? So like I always said, I rather know and go into a day knowing I'm short staffed than going into a day and finding out last minute that someone didn't show up to work. Like that is, get rid of those employees. They're not in it for the team. They don't care about the team. So I know that's a hard thing to say on a busy summer, but I said we all did it. I cleaned houses. I made beds. I'd rather know myself. I'm going in and doing that and taking care of these homes than being able to like try to push a cleaner through 4 homes in 6 hours.
But
It's
Jody, it is so. Look, I've been in your shoes. It's so hard in the peak season when you have that many check-ins coming in and out, and you need bodies desperately.
Yep.
Like how, I'm just curious, how would you need to hire a staff up, 230 people, like, and obviously a lot of that is season. I'm sure some of those are seasonal. Like, how did you recruit them? Like, how did you bring in those? I mean, that's a lot of people for Western Maryland where there's not a lot of people living out there.
So there's a couple things we did that were different. So we offered services for non-renting homes. So we did hot tub service, dock service, lawn service, inspections, setups, security checks, because like we get crazy winters, not this winter, but we get crazy winters. So I needed employees year round for that business, right? So it kind of worked out where I didn't need to hire mass amounts for seasonal, right? I had them. So we started that in the very beginning of starting TaylorMade. So we didn't have to mass hire. Now, did we still have to hire like 40 crews in the summer? Yes. And so a thing that was nice, we're in a small town, as many are. And well, I didn't grow up here, but my husband did. He either grew up with these people or he managed them in another business. He was in the restaurant business before this. So like he knew when people, he could flush out people pretty quick of like not wasting our time with interviews. And then everybody wanted to work for TaylorMade. So it was a little bit easier, not the easiest. We did referral programs for our employees if they referred coworkers. That was a really good asset for us. But we did also in the summer to keep these people and not to call off. We did programs like where their bonus would be based on how many days they worked on Saturdays and Sundays. We would subtract if they had a call off, not because of sickness or death. I mean, those things happen. A call off and efficiency. Oh, and reviews. So their bonus at the end of the month could be, oh no, where'd you go? Hold on, I lost you. Their bonus, there you are, back, sorry. Their bonus can be based on, it can go up and down. And some of them made really good money and all they had to do was show up to work. So and then they also they would get bonuses for coming back the next summer. So I think there's a lot of things in there. But I think at the end of the day, something that I haven't mentioned, I should have mentioned, is team culture. Our employees were family to us, and Joe, Chad, and I are family, but our team was an extension of our family. I mean, they saw us working. I didn't sit behind a desk like some companies do. I was in the trenches with them. If they were feeling it, I was feeling it, and then we supported them and then we celebrated them. So it is a lot of money to invest in your team, but I took my team, like you've seen me at conferences. I've taken a lot of them to conferences. One told me that she only vacations with me. But I'm like, that's not a vacation. We're at work. We're like traveling for work. And she goes, it's a vacation. But I invest in them. And, when COVID happened and everybody lost a lot of, help, we didn't. My core stuck tight to us and we took care of them when, a lot of companies didn't. So, I mean, team culture is huge. So that's why I think also firing is a little bit more difficult for us that make this so it is personal when it becomes to your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the most interesting note of that block to me, Jodi, was your commentary about building these additional lines of business so you could give people work year round. And I imagine in a seasonal market, it's like, well, if you stick with TaylorMade, they'll stick with you. Like they'll give you stuff to do in December or something like that, or the fall or the spring when there may not be as much work to go around. So then they don't want to disappoint you because then they go, well, I may go get a job at some other company, but they might not have that opportunity. And then I'm in a worse position. So not that you're like holding that over their heads, it's more of an opportunity. And some people I'm sure want that consistency.
That other point with that though, is that, most people just have cleaners like work on turn days, like Saturdays and Sundays. But because of that business, they were able to work 3 to 4 to 5 days a week. So it was different. They were able to get more work than just working 2 days a week.
Yeah. Because obviously in that scenario, 1 or 2 days a week, obviously you're not their primary source of income. They're going to have to go get other things. And then you're one of 7 priorities they may have. So that always makes it a little more tricky. Right. You mentioned number 3, Jodi, but I'll just read it off for the benefit of the listener. Know when to fire when a team member is consistently unreliable, even if you need the help, cut the strings ASAP. You're better off being shorthanded in scheduling than dealing with last minute call-offs that leave you scrambling. So that was number 3. We'll go into number 4 because I think this is the next one that matters quite a bit, Jodi. Number 4, always remember this too shall pass. I constantly tell myself that. Keeping this mantra in mind will help you avoid knee-jerk reactions like emails written out of anger. Sleep on it. The next day, you always have a clear head. But if you sleep, if you sleep on it and you still mean it the next day, it's okay. Have at it. You mentioned in the book. This is a relationship business, and we always say don't take it personally, but it is personal. Everything in business is always personal. That is why you have to continue to improve, because it personally matters. So it sounds like this is a bit of an emotional thing, right? How do we not overreact in that moment emotionally? But when it requires it, it's good to have some emotion because there's some passion in there. So how do you guide those things in your own
It's
approach?
like when you get that email from the owner says, and it's like your annual email from that same owner that's like, I'm talking in the competition and they said this, 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 and this. And it would be like, you have to take you given this owner everything. They made more money, they have better marketing, they have great services, but they always like to hold it over you. So you have those owners that hold it over to get better service or a better discount or a deal, and you just get so aggravated. And that's I'm like, all right, you just need to turn it off. You need to go home. You need to sleep on it. Maybe have a glass of wine. And in the morning, with a clear head, then you respond. My mom always taught me never to send an email in anger. And sometimes I didn't always listen. Um, and, or the owners that, or it was owners or employees. Employees were a little bit easier for me, because if I was that angry and they were saying something, I'm good with letting them go. Like, it was probably best if we part ways. But sometimes the owners could just say things, and some of them don't realize that it's personal. It's not. I was a big company, but I'm not a big corporation. This still put money, in my pockets and in my employees' pockets, and it gave taxes to our community where my kids go to school. It's all personal, And so when you get someone that kind of does an attack on you and your business, you had to take a step back. And there was a couple times I didn't. And there was, I don't know if we're going to get into firing owners, but there was one good one that, I think that's later on.
I think we have that later on. Yeah.
We'll talk about that one
Yeah,
in a little
yeah.
bit. But I did hold my tongue for quite a bit of time.
Jodi, I love these so much. Like, I literally should have this printed out in front of me, because I think it actually took me probably 20 years, but you nailed it. Like, literally you nailed it. Like, sleep on it. And it took me 20 years to finally realize that, because I used to fire off I get all fired up and I'd fire off some email, and it would come back and it would always get worse, and then it would go back and forth. Yes,
like, it could have been handled differently, right? We should have picked up the phone.
You know what? I think Mike Harrington said that at one point. He goes, by the third email, like back and forth, just pick up the damn phone,
And you could get it, and it would probably been over by now. Yes. But yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like sometimes too, things don't come across well written, even if especially if they're slightly uncomfortable things. Like, maybe the only thing that competitor said was something small, and it was like, oh yeah, like your lawn decoration fell over and no one had booked it in a week, and they went by and see, they're not taking care of their property, the lawn decoration fell over, and you were like, we could fix that in 9 seconds. You know what I mean? But if you just called them on the phone, they would have alluded to that comment. I heard a client that I work with said that before, something about a chair being fallen over on the back deck. They don't care, the chair fell over, and it's like no one had booked it for maybe a week or two because it was low season. And he was like, I would have fixed that. That would have taken 5 seconds. It was no big deal. But this owner took it as, well, if that's wrong, I'm sure everything else is wrong, which of course is not true. But it's the classic rookie. Rob told me this on the team. In the absence of information, people are going to assume the worst. And that's kind of, where you can fill the gap of information. That can help people quite a bit. Needless to say. Number 5 here, Jodi, kind of getting more into the people dynamics, which seems to be a lot of the mistakes that you highlighted here. And I like these too, because they do kind of highlight the fact that you are dealing with all this people. The fact that people call this passive income or something is just so ridiculous if they knew how many people are involved in just getting, through one season in a vacation rental. But I digress. I got a little off topic there. Number 5, do not get involved with office gossip and try to nip it in the bud quickly. Always go straight to those involved and get the real story should you need to intervene. What's the lesson here that folks can learn from?
Don't deal with gossip. Honestly, I actually cut it out completely. Like, if there's gossip in my company, it's best if we just part ways, because the drama that it creates a bad working environment. And sometimes you don't want to get rid of these people, or honestly, there was a point that I just didn't want to be involved. Like, figure it out on your own. That didn't always work well, because then some of the people you told to figure out for them started getting involved in the gossip themselves and the drama. And I'm like, no, like, this just needs to be out. And okay, we're women, and sometimes we feed off drama. I can't stand it. I can't have it in my work spot. So it's best just to nip it in the bud. Like Joe, I think Joe and Chad just ignore it. I think they just ignored it. I'm like, but do you hear what these people are saying about each other? It is insane. Get rid of it, cut it out, move on. You're
Yeah.
better off.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Conrad. I think we have a mutual friend that has a policy. It's like a no gossip policy. It's like if he catches it, it's done. You're fired. It's like literally like grounds for termination. Like just he does not have anything to do with it.
I wish I had
Yeah.
that right from the beginning. Then it would have helped a lot of headaches.
Yeah. And that has to be the expression, one bad apple spoils the bunch. Has to be from
Yeah,
those kind of things where like it seeps in the lowest level and then it just like spreads like
it
a wildfire,
festers.
like cancer. Yeah, or something. It just goes the wrong way. It's always bad. No, I think that's an important lesson to learn. All right, headed over to number 6 then. Don't spread yourself too thin and watch the numbers. Even though there's a need for something, does not mean you need to be the one to fill it. Analyze it, watch the numbers, and balance the need with risk. So I feel like this is every small business owner, right, Jodi? When do you take action and when do you kind of let things sit for a while? It would be easy to overreact to everything, but sometimes we do have to like sit back, calm down, look at things, and then figure out like more plotting, like what's the best approach. How did you find your balance as you operated the business?
So I feel like we're all entrepreneurs, right? So we always see a need out there, like a need of to do something. So like I'll give you a good example. We found that the firewood prices in the area were getting crazy. Our owners were getting some kickback. They didn't want to supply it for the guests during certain seasons. So I looked out my window and my husband had a Mack truck full of firewood dumped in our back parking lot. I'm like, what do you do with all that? And he's like, we're gonna sell firewood. And it made sense because it filled a need, but was it profitable? Probably not. And it was something like I probably wouldn't do again. I think with my business, though, I'm going a different angle, but we'll talk about that later. But no, it was something. So I always felt like some things that were profitable were lawn, that worked. But like if you do it, like you fill that need, but then watch your numbers. Like, so we did the firewood a little bit longer than we probably should have. We probably should have gotten out, but we had a shortage of wood. There was another thing that happened that was crazy. So if you do something like that and you do something that fits your company, right? It's something your company needs or your homes need. But if you don't watch your numbers, you're going to find that it's going to be like it's going to be cash negative for you. So
Well, it's
firewood is
not
one. There's a couple others, but
it's not only that. It's also what's the opportunity cost. You would
right,
have spent all that time and effort doing it. Like you could have probably signed up 2 new properties, which would have made a hell of a lot more money, most likely. I think Justin Ford talked about something like that. He had a boat rental company. He was doing like grocery provisioning. He's doing
I
all
think
these
baby
different things.
delivery,
He's like,
like cribs and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, I could have signed up 2 properties and made well more than that and had not had all the headaches, associated with it.
right. But you
Yeah.
see a need. We're entrepreneurs. You feel like, oh, there's a need.
Right.
We should do that. Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Watch your numbers.
Yeah. The phrase that Brooke and I have kind of picked out a few times so far, Jodi, has been the idea of a shiny object. That the
Oh, yeah.
firewood was a shiny object,
Oh,
and
yeah.
sometimes the shiny object is shiny. Like the lawn may have been kind of shiny. It was like, hey, this was a need. It made sense. We had a lot of the infrastructure in place. But with firewood, I think Brooke nailed it right. What am I spending time wise? And I'm making a buck a cord or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
is it worth it at that point? Probably not.
Nope.
Better off just referring that business and helping someone else live their dream of being the firewood king of Deep Creek or something. But all right, number 7. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can hammer it home a little bit. Do not wait too long to fire an owner. If you're feeling frustrated with them, so are your employees. We didn't go to that angle, so maybe that's the place to go. If anyone is badgering your staff, has unrealistic expectations, cut them loose. You're better off, and they may be too. That's the thing. I don't know, Jodi, your experience with it. Sometimes I have this experience within my own company, which is that I don't necessarily feel like the client's unhappy, but the client maybe is being rude to someone on my team, but they don't tell me right away. So I sometimes think, oh, everything's great with client ABC, and then I dig under the surface a little bit, and I go, oh no, client ABC is being a jerk to someone on my team, and then I figured out. So was that kind of the lesson to learn as an expansion of what you've talked about here with owners?
So I'll give you my example, and I might have talked about this one before. So it was my top grossing property. Top grossing. Talk about 250,000 a year. And I knew she was high maintenance. And there was nothing wrong with that. She had a great house, right? And what I found out is that she wasn't just calling her owner rep, she was calling everyone in the company, including Joe Chad and myself, to find the answer that she wanted, right? So then you had us all like chasing our tails, and then that went on for years. She made me cut costs on maintenance because she thought she deserved it. She made me cut costs on labor as far as housekeeping, like not charge her as much when I had to do actually more work for her house than I had to do others. And the camel that broke the straw's back, or the straw that broke the camel's back, I'll get it right, was I found out she made a third employee cry. I should have nipped it at the first. And I called her up, and I did it elegantly enough for her to basically fire me. I made it sound like it was she would be better off with another company than us. We just couldn't meet her needs, and she needed something different. So instead of like I wanted to say you're gone, like you are done, I kind of tried to be. It was a sometimes maybe you can't help the way you come across. I don't know. I was trying to be the nicer person. I cut her loose. But I told her I'll honor all the reservations on the books. 3 months later, I get an email that she wants to meet with Joe, Chad, and myself. And so when I saw she put Chad in there, I'm like, what do you want? You and Chad didn't get along? Because he always said no. I'm like, what is it? And so we went over and she made me a homemade this beautiful lunch. It was amazing. And then she goes, what would you do to take me back? And I sat
And you could
there.
negotiate whatever you wanted to.
Her husband got up because he was like, he's not having any part of this conversation. I said, I'm going to charge you more money. You're going to pay full price plus for my maintenance guys. I'm going to get down. You're going to do marketing that everyone else has. And your house better be burning down if you ever call Joe, Chad, or myself again. And she came back. I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have came back after that conversation. So one, I should have fired her earlier. Two, trust you offer good products. You offer good service. Trust in that and they'll see it. Like, and she, I mean, did she adhere to all of it? Not really. But you know what? She was a better person afterwards. Like she understood and respected my staff. And I never had a conversation of her being nasty again. Was she still high maintenance? Yeah, but not like before. So don't be too late to fire an owner. I should have done it earlier. My employees would have loved me a lot more, a lot faster.
Well, it's not even just firing; it's doing the takeaway. And sometimes, look, they don't know I mean, it's obvious. Everyone on your team knows it's obvious.
Yeah.
They may not think they're being that high maintenance and unreasonable. This is just their personality. So I think if you do that takeaway, if you let them know that this is not acceptable, and then see if they continue to do it, then you fire them. But maybe give them the opportunity by doing that. And I've used this line, your line, actually, Jodi, many times. I've done it on a couple of presentations even since because I like it so much. But we see this all the time. It's just the stress. Even with Vintory, we've had over 700 partners on our platform. Like that one partner, that one customer is not worth all the stress to your team. I mean, we could have 699 great customers, but if you have that one, that's all you think about all day. That's all your team thinks about is that jerk they're about to meet with later on in the afternoon, and it's just not worth the stress and possibly losing good team members over something silly like this.
It's not. So yeah, I mean, we've had a couple other ones, but that was an extreme one. But I had one that would get on his hands and knees and check under the cabinets at the kickboard, the kickboard and make sure that was clean every time. I'm like, really? That is what you do when you come to your house at the mountains? You're going to get on your hands and knees? That was a good one. I fired him because he was just unreasonable. I didn't fire this next one, but she did have unrealistic, and I'm going to have to say it real quick. She brings me to her house, and I'm not kidding. So she takes me into her bathroom. That's her bathroom in the house. I said, okay. She goes, Jodi, stick your head down in that toilet and look up. Do you see that? I'm like, whoa, I'm not sticking my head down in the toilet. I'm not doing that. I won't say her name. Because I loved her, but she had unrealistic, and that's what she was doing to my employees. And so I said it straight right there. Like, I get what you're saying, but let's go about it a different way, please. We're all human.
That's a good line too. Yeah,
we're not going to stick our heads in a toilet.
Yeah. I also feel like there's no way when you guys got the listing that the toilet was probably that clean anyways under the ring. You know what I mean? It probably wasn't that good anyways. But then she noticed it when other people started using her property. That's probably.
But I'd like to know how she noticed it.
She must have done what she suggested you do. Stick her head in there. She didn't have the long dark hair like you.
Yeah, probably not.
Let's hope not. But no, I think you bring out some good points there too, Jodi, which is like the idea that if you offer a good service, it's okay to say no. I think to Brooke's point about the personality of these people, I always say this too to people on my team and things like that. If they have a second home that's worth probably $1 million or $2 million, I would imagine if it's grossing 250, they have success in their life usually, right? Like unless it was passed down to them, but usually if they had that kind of investment, they were successful in business or they had something that they did from they're a doctor, they're a lawyer, et cetera. So they're used to being in positions of power. They're used to being maybe in charge. So when they deal with you, it's like they're going to treat you maybe like an extension of their team. That may be how they treat her team if she was a small business owner or something like that.
But you
So
want
you
to
never
know
know,
what
and
the
go ahead.
positive that came out of that is that she became closer to me after that and
Mm.
more like family. Like she reached out to me when she heard things were going on with my parents, and I the same. And even now, after I don't even own the company anymore. So I think people sometimes you just got to be real and tell
Yeah.
them. And I didn't expect it. I didn't expect that at all. So anyway,
Yeah.
it
No,
works.
it's a good lesson too, and like standing up for yourself too, and having like that conversation, just being real with people, and getting a much better outcome for sure. Well, number 8 then is a slightly different direction, Jody. So we'll go down this path here really quickly. Take liability issues seriously. Make sure your staff understands this as well. Ongoing training is important to invest in. Make sure you're completely protected with the systems and checks and balances for safety, inspection, repairs, and so on and so forth. Obviously, there's lots of folks in the industry, Eric Thibodeau, Justin Ford, that talk about safety. Maybe you could talk about your experience with keeping, liability and safety at the forefront of all the properties that you managed.
Okay, so yeah, so this is one that I've been wanting VRMA to dive more into. Insurance, liabilities, issues. Look, if you're in business long enough, you're going to get sued. One way or another, it's going to happen. And we dealt with some doozies, and they were very serious and very, very emotionally involved. And it was definitely a hard, lesson. And there's things that we did right, and there's things I would change. So when it comes to this, like, make sure you document everything. Make sure your employees understand the severity of things. I guess that's the best thing. Some people play things off like they're just complaining, when no, it's a true issue. And we shouldn't even gotten to that had we done our job, and we didn't do our job. And how do you prevent that for the future? Because to me, it's always a lesson, right? And so make sure you have the proper insurance that covers you and liabilities. Make sure you have practices, policies, processes all in place to prevent a situation, or if a situation happens, what your team is supposed to do. And we're not talking just because, not just because hurricanes are a big deal, not just natural causes, but if someone gets really hurt at one of your properties, what are your steps? What do you do next? So that is very important that we worked on a lot in our company throughout the years, because it's been very interesting. But I'd love for VRMA or a company or any conference to go through that and discuss, like, and bring in insurance guys, bring in lawyers, bring in all the lawyers. And we did a conference, and Ryan Swaim brought in both sides of the lawyers because they were friends, and they talked to us about what you should be doing, what you should not be doing, what you can be saying in situations. But no one wants to talk about it's. I don't know if no one wants to talk about it, but I think we need to protect ourselves, but we need to protect our guests at our homes and our owners. And how do you do that? So and a lot of stuff Justin Ford goes through, and he is amazing. But like it's also steps that your team knows. So there's things that, we didn't know then that we know now, that we would have done. So.
And I feel like nobody really takes this seriously until they actually go through an experience where they actually have something happen. And then it's like the oh shit moment, and they have to do it, right? Then they're like, oh my gosh, we're so vulnerable here. But you're right, Eric Thibodeau, Justin Ford, they're going through this. Thank goodness for them to bring light to this. But nobody is really doing this. Like I said, very few people, very few companies are actually doing anything with this. But I just did some quick numbers. So if you had over 500 properties, and if you have like 12 weeks rented per property, which is conservative, especially on Deep Creek, I mean, that's over 6,000 reservations. You're bound to have something happen in one of the. Somebody's going to fall down the stairs. Something's the deck railing is going to be loose. I mean, I was staying at a vacation rental. My brother-in-law was leaning against it, and the deck railing fell off, and he fell off the deck. Luckily, he's a pretty agile guy, and it wasn't a 2-story deck, but it was still pretty high. If that was my mother, my father, that could have gotten really ugly. So I think Justin had a situation where that started this whole entire thing. Was he had a guest jump into a hammock, the hammock broke, swung over, and the metal bar hit her, like fractured her skull.
Oh, I think I heard that story. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, like just these freak things that you got. But I think to your point, look, you're not going to solve every accident. You can't do it. But to at least have systems and processes in place, you know what I mean, to at least check for it, to show you at least did some due diligence on trying to, but also if an incident happens, to your point, Jodi, what can they say? What can they not say? You know what I mean? Like, how do you resolve it? The incident report, like put some SOPs together, because it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Like you said, it's not a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when it happens.
It's when, and like some things that we were smart to do, like videotaping situations, the videotape was used. Notes in your reservation system, and your work orders, make sure your staff does not elaborate conversations. I've had very crafty maintenance guys put some comments in, and guess what? Who reads them? The judge.
Yeah.
The judge reads them.
Evidence. Yeah.
And he will not find that funny whatsoever. So there's a lot of lessons, and I think it's stuff that we got to talk about and be real, but we also got to be protecting our guests. It goes both ways. So it's like, be able to look for it. Like we do inspections. That was helpful. That helped us. We do annual maintenance inspections on all of our homes, and that was helpful. And then you keep your records like forever. So anyway, those things, that's a dreary part, but it's something that, like, as business owners, I will tell you that's one thing that tapped us the most. When you ask us, Joe, Chad, and myself, towards the end of that business, that really drained us. But we all handle things differently. So.
Yeah, Jodi, I think your perspective is really important too. It's like you're trying to actually protect everybody. That is the property manager's job. We're trying to take care of the owner, of course. They're the ones that kind of pays the bills in some respect, right? But we can't ignore the guest. I mean, they're the ones who are ultimately going to hopefully enjoy it and think of it as, I do a different show and we talk about this might be the baby's first vacation or grandma's last vacation. That's too serious of a thing to take in and not take it seriously, right? Like that's going to be something that they're going to remember forever. Let's not mar it with something less than ideal from a property care perspective or something like that. And you're right, Brooke, unfortunately, people don't listen to these people enough, like Eric and Justin, and then when something bad happens, they get attention, and then that fades away when nothing bad happens for a while. And I wish that was not the case. So hopefully us talking about it here for a few minutes gets more people to point themselves in that direction as well. Number 9 then, Jodi. It is okay to say no, whether it's unrealistic requests from an owner, serving on boards, or volunteering at events. Only say yes to what matters to you the most. Prioritize your personal time. Jodi, I will say burnout came up over and over again during these past recordings, and this is a business that'll pull you in 1,000 different directions. How did you manage this? Did you find the right balance for you over time and your brother and husband, or what was the way that you guys balanced your personal time and the work time, which is important?
So this is a tough one because my husband is my partner. Like Chad at least got a little bit of break, but could have been good or bad. Like Joe and I could bounce things back and forth at home, but everybody's like, leave stuff at the office. That was hard for me. I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So like when I'm in, I'm all in. And so that means, and that was tough. Like, especially when I started having babies and, growing a family. And then I get asked to be on boards. And I'm not just talking about VRMA. When VRMA asked me to be on board, I started the VRX, which was 8 to 10 companies up and down the East Coast that got together. I started that. I got on a couple local boards. I was coach. I was coaching my kids' sports, being a mother and a wife. I mean, it's just, I feel like those that say yes all the time, right? So saying no was hard for me, and it took a while for me to figure out. And you talk about burnout. I feel like in this business, your phone's ringing all the time, and I made the mistake to always answer. I think that stopped when that one owner found my house phone. Joe nipped that one in the bud real quick. When she found the house telephone, she never did that again.
You weren't responding to my email, so I figured I'd call you.
Text, cell phone, and then email, and then home phone. So it was the home phone that got Joe. And so I'm like pouring a glass of wine going, oh no, this is not. And it wasn't pretty.
Have you ever had anybody show up at your front door?
No. Oh, no, I have not. No, not that one. I've had other ones. Have you had people stalk your front door?
No, luckily not. Yeah.
I was like, no, I think they'd be scared of Joe. Like, I don't think they would do that.
He's not a short man. Yeah.
He's not a short man, but no, I've had people sit in my office and wait till I came back for hours. And I'm a responsive person. Like, I am fast, and they didn't care, but it's okay. But yeah, saying no is a hard thing for me to do, especially me.
Yeah, I think Steve Trober nailed this one very similar to you, Jodi. He said he admitted stretched himself too thin by being on numerous boards and committees. And as he shared, at one point, he had a total of 14 at one time. Giving back is great, but not to the detriment of your company. I also have what I call entrepreneurial ADHD. and starting too many companies. You don't wear a cape. Focus. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good one. It's like we are
That is a good one.
entrepreneurs, and we will just, when we see something, an opportunity, we go for it. Sometimes to the detriment of other companies and businesses. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, to your point earlier, there's so many of these adjacent things next to this business where it's so easy to do that. It would be so easy to get into the cleaning business, right? It'd be so easy to get into laundry. We have clients that have done that before, and some of them actually really appreciated it. So it's not all bad things. Sometimes you find some winners in that mix of things,
Yep.
but you can certainly waste a heck of a lot of time too and go down some wrong paths in that winding journey. Well, Jodi, I know we got a handful more minutes with you, so we got a few more things I think to button up here on number 10. And then one question that Brooke has for you. Number 10, at the end of the day, the company's your work and life legacy. You'll put everything into it. And if you're not comfortable with a big change, don't do it. So what was the legacy that you feel like you left and kind of your, successful growth and then exit of your company? How would you kind of wrap that up and where you landed at the end of the day?
That one can get emotional. I feel like we built a very community forward company that was focused around our employees. We were very in tune with them, that we had incredible relationships with our owners. Incredible. And we built that company in 14 years from scratch. And a lot of our employees grew with us. And so there's, there are things that make you wonder, like, what would you do differently, or what would you change? It's, and those are conversations for the future that we would talk about with that. But I think we left a good legacy, and I hope it stays in, it's my team still there. So I still help them when they need it. And the owners are still calling because we have those relationships. But I feel like, if there's a change, it's hard. It's hard for most people to make changes. And when I make a change, it's just make sure that you make the right decision with the right research and background to make a change for your company. It could be from getting a partner. It could be to hiring key employees, or taking on a different route of bringing on owners. Like, I could talk about some that I did, and I would never do again. And so there are some things like that, but you making changes with your company is a big deal, and you shouldn't take it lightly.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I think, Brooke, you got one question that you're going to fire Jodi's way, so I'll let you do that one, and then we could put a bow on this one. But this was great, Jodi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jodi, thanks again for jumping on here. This was fantastic. And so if you could go back in time, go back to your 25-year-old self and give a little bit of advice, what would it be?
Well, when I was 25, I had no money. So this will be a tough one. But basically, I'd like to tell myself money and profit is not everything, but life and happiness is. So there are things that you should take, and there's things you should not, but don't base it on money, because that will not get you through, and you cannot take it with you when you die.
Very true.
Awesome,
Jodi.
That's
well,
fantastic.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. So we can put links in the show notes to what you're doing today, so people can kind of stay up to date and maybe stay in one of your new kind of properties, whether that be down in Florida or up in Deep Creek, what you're doing now. It sounds really exciting. But thank you, Jodi. I think it's always good to get the perspective of someone that has been there, done it, not for a year, not for 2 years, not for 3 years, but 14 years, 500 plus properties. It's impressive. So we thank you for your time.